But today is the day that I declare my decision of being done with ducking and dodging the dope description. Hoping humming hymns of humility would keep me humble. Really, I just been hunkered down, hiding out in the safe haven of this honeysuckle honeycomb called I've done that already.
Under the dim light of early morning, a quiet unease settled over Los Angeles as the first reports of Malcolm-Jamal Warner's death began to surface. News outlets scrambled for confirmation while social media exploded with disbelief. Within an hour, tributes poured in, fans recalling his iconic roles, colleagues expressing heartbreak, and entertainment reporters revisiting his career highlights. But as the world mourned, something in the official timeline didn't add up. The first public announcement of his passing was time-stamped at 7:42 in the morning. Yet, according to newly leaked FBI documents, a private jet took off from Van Nuys Airport just 2 hours later, and the name on that flight manifest has sent shockwaves through every agency that has seen it. The leak appeared on an encrypted forum used by investigative journalists and insiders, a scanned copy of an internal FBI memo stamped classified, internal use only. The memo referenced Malcolm-Jamal Warner and detailed communications between federal agents and airport security officials on the morning of his reported death. The tone of the memo was urgent, noting a priority request for passenger verification. On a Gulfstream G550 registered under a shell company known to have ties with a former intelligence contractor. The memo ends abruptly, suggesting that the file was intercepted mid-transmission. Within hours of its appearance online, it vanished, but not before screenshots began circulating among independent researchers. What caught investigators' attention was the timestamp. The jet's recorded departure was 9:41 in the morning, exactly 1 hour and 59 minutes after Malcolm-Jamal Warner's supposed time of death. Cross-referencing the flight path, analysts traced the plane to a mid-air refueling stop near El Paso, Texas, before its transponder signal was mysteriously cut off over the Gulf of Mexico. The aircraft was never registered to any entertainment or media entity. Instead, it was linked to a dormant corporation headquartered in the Cayman Islands, one previously flagged by the Department of Justice for financial irregularities. The destination listed in preliminary air traffic logs read only, Unidentified Caribbean Zone B. Former aviation analyst Robert Latham, who examined the leaked flight data, stated that the operation bore the hallmarks of a covert extraction. Everything about this flight is structured for anonymity: the routing, the registration, even the timing, he explained. If Malcolm-Jamal Warner was on that plane, someone with serious resources wanted him off U.S. soil before any questions could be asked. Latham added that such operations often rely on private security firms with ex-military pilots and offshore funding to mask their true purpose. But what would push a Hollywood actor known for his steady career and low-profile lifestyle to vanish in such a manner? Theories began to surface almost immediately. Some pointed to Malcolm-Jamal Warner's rumored involvement in a legal dispute over residual payments from a major streaming platform. Others hinted at a more personal reason: a private investigation he had allegedly begun months before his disappearance, involving missing funds and falsified contracts tied to his management. An anonymous source claiming to have worked with Malcolm-Jamal Warner's accountant suggested that he had uncovered something too big to walk away from. That same source, speaking under encryption to an online journalist, insisted that Malcolm-Jamal Warner feared his communications were being monitored in the weeks leading up to his death. The FBI's own internal silence has only deepened suspicion. When asked for comment, a spokesperson issued a brief statement: "We are aware of the alleged materials circulating online and cannot verify their authenticity. There is no active federal investigation into Malcolm-Jamal Warner's reported passing." Yet, former Bureau officials say the phrasing of that denial is notable. "They didn't say the documents were fake," said retired agent Thomas Greer. They said they couldn't verify them. That's a legal distinction, and it usually means there's something they can't publicly acknowledge. Meanwhile, at Van Nuys Airport, inconsistencies in the flight's documentation have begun to surface. Two ground crew employees told investigators that they were instructed to load unmarked black luggage onto a private aircraft under urgent client confidentiality. One described seeing a tall man wearing a hoodie and dark glasses escorted onto the plane by two unidentified individuals. When shown a photo of Malcolm-Jamal Warner, he hesitated before saying, if it wasn't him, it was someone who looked a lot like him. Within days of that statement, both employees reportedly took leaves of absence, one relocating out of state entirely. The most chilling piece of evidence, however, comes from the airport's CCTV feed. While official statements claim the footage for that morning was corrupted due to a storage error, a recovered clip from an off-site camera shows a figure matching Malcolm-Jamal Warner's build and gait walking across the private terminal tarmac at approximately 9:20 in the morning. The man's face is obscured by sunglasses and a cap, but his distinctive walk, long stride, slight rightward lean has been compared frame by frame with Malcolm-Jamal Warner's public appearances. Forensic analysts consulted by independent journalists concluded there is a high likelihood that the person in the footage is indeed Malcolm-Jamal Warner. If the footage is authentic, it presents an impossible question. How could a man declared dead appear alive less than 2 hours later? Theories range from identity misreporting to elaborate body doubles, yet each explanation raises more questions than it answers. The official death certificate, released within hours of the announcement, lists cardiac arrest as the cause of death, but the absence of any autopsy record or coroner's statement has drawn criticism even from within Los Angeles County's medical community. "We don't issue certificates without verification," said one medical examiner under condition of anonymity. "Something about that file doesn't follow normal protocol." By late evening, the story had split into two realities. The one the public believed a tragic, sudden death of a beloved actor, and the one unfolding quietly in classified files, encrypted drives, and a Caribbean flight path that disappeared into silence. Investigators, journalists, and online analysts alike were left with a haunting paradox. If Malcolm-Jamal Warner truly died that morning, then who or what was on that plane? By the following morning, the leak had evolved from a rumor to a full-scale digital investigation. Independent researchers, aviation enthusiasts, and journalists began combing through public flight records, airport communication logs, and even archived radar data, piecing together the fragments of what might have been Malcolm-Jamal Warner's final movements before his mysterious disappearance. While official channels remained silent, the online community, operating from forums, encrypted messaging groups, and investigative YouTube channels, worked as though they were unearthing the truth the authorities didn't want exposed. A new narrative was beginning to take shape, one in which Malcolm-Jamal Warner's so-called death was less a tragedy and more an elaborate vanishing act, executed with precision and backed by powerful, unseen forces. In the early hours of the investigation, one of the most compelling leads came from a retired flight engineer named Samuel Ortiz. Ortiz claimed that he recognized the serial number of the Gulfstream G550 in question because it had once been part of a fleet managed by a company known for contracting with the U.S. government during the early 2000s. He described the company as a cover operator, an aviation front used for discreet transport missions involving high-profile individuals and, at times, sensitive assets. When confronted with this information, a Department of Transportation official declined to comment, citing classification constraints. Ortiz, however, was unshaken in his assessment. That aircraft wasn't meant for leisure travel. Whoever used it had connections that go beyond Hollywood. Meanwhile, the timelines surrounding Malcolm-Jamal Warner's reported death continued to blur. Multiple eyewitnesses came forward with conflicting statements about the actor's last known appearance. One restaurant manager claimed he saw Warner dining quietly with two unidentified men at a small bistro in Burbank less than 12 hours before the official announcement. Another witness, a valet working near the same location, remembered seeing a black SUV with tinted windows waiting outside for over an hour. The surveillance footage from that night, as with much of the surrounding evidence, was conveniently unavailable, deleted, corrupted, or under review. Each missing frame deepened the growing sense that this was no random disappearance but a meticulously constructed event. Further complicating the mystery was the sudden retraction of obituaries from two major entertainment outlets that had initially reported Warner's passing. Archived versions of those articles briefly listed pending medical confirmation, before being replaced with vague memorial statements. When pressed for details, one editor, speaking under anonymity, admitted that the publication had received an unexpected legal notice, instructing them to withdraw specific information from the piece. The source refused to disclose who issued the order, only adding, "It didn't come from the family or his agency. That's all I can say." Behind the scenes, several private investigators began to suspect that Malcolm-Jamal Warner had been working on something in the months before his disappearance. According to internal emails leaked from one of his former production associates, Warner had shown increasing interest in a dormant film project tied to real-life government surveillance programs. The project, said to be based on declassified material, had reportedly been shelved after external pressure from unnamed investors. One of Warner's emails, dated roughly 3 weeks before his alleged death, read, "If what I've been told is true, then it's not just a story, it's a warning." Those words would become a chilling refrain, repeated by online theorists for months afterward. Within official circles, the narrative grew stranger still. An aviation control officer based in Houston, who spoke with an independent podcast host, recalled receiving an unusual rerouting request the same morning the Gulfstream disappeared. "We got an encrypted ping from a private channel," he said. "It wasn't something civilian aircraft normally use. It looked military grade." When asked to confirm whether the signal could have come from the same plane linked to Malcolm-Jamal Warner, the officer paused before saying, "I can't say for sure, but the timing lines up almost perfectly." He later requested anonymity and claimed to have been contacted by unidentified individuals warning him to stay silent about the matter. Meanwhile, the actor's family remained notably absent from the public eye. No public funeral was held. No official statement was issued beyond a short press release citing privacy during this difficult time. Journalists who attempted to contact Warner's relatives reported that phone numbers had been disconnected, and even long-time associates seemed unreachable. A neighbor from Warner's Los Angeles residence claimed that, in the days following his supposed death, 2 black SUVs had been seen parked outside the property late at night. They weren't from the media, the neighbor insisted. They didn't carry cameras or flowers. They were watching the house. As these strange developments piled up, the media narrative began to fracture. Some outlets cautiously began questioning the inconsistencies, while others dismissed the story as online hysteria. Yet each new piece of leaked data seemed to validate the initial suspicions. Something had gone terribly wrong, or perhaps terribly right, on the morning Malcolm-Jamal Warner supposedly died. Analysts examining the digital fingerprints of the leak noted that the metadata of the FBI memo suggested it had been edited from within a classified network 2 hours after its original creation. In other words, someone inside the system may have been trying to alter the evidence after it had already been exposed. In the days that followed, rumors of a witness began to circulate, a person who allegedly saw Malcolm-Jamal Warner alive and speaking with officials at a private airstrip in the Caribbean less than a week after his reported death. No name was given, no photo released, yet the claim alone was enough to reignite the entire online investigation. If true, it would mean that not only did Warner survive, but that his escape flight was part of an orchestrated disappearance known only to a select few. Independent journalist Clara Menz, who has covered intelligence leaks for over a decade, summarized it best. This isn't about a celebrity faking his death for privacy. This smells like a controlled extraction, someone either protecting him or silencing him permanently. By the end of that week, the line between fact and speculation had all but vanished. Digital analysts traced the encrypted upload of the FBI memo to a proxy node operating out of Zurich, suggesting the leak may have originated from a European source with inside access. The U.S. government, when questioned by reporters, maintained its silence, neither confirming nor denying any connection between the leaked flight data and Malcolm-Jamal Warner's case. Yet, as the evidence continued to stack up, vanished files, rerouted flights, missing witnesses, it became increasingly difficult to dismiss the possibility that the truth was far more complex than a tragic death. Somewhere between the silence of official channels and the noise of digital investigators, one haunting question refused to fade. Had Malcolm-Jamal Warner truly died in Los Angeles, or had he simply disappeared into a world that was never meant to be seen? By the second week after Malcolm-Jamal Warner's reported death, the story had evolved into a global phenomenon. What began as a single leaked document had now become an intricate web of clues, inconsistencies, and silent witnesses. Independent journalists and amateur investigators were no longer just speculating, they were connecting dots that even mainstream outlets could no longer ignore. Yet, with each new piece of evidence, the mystery only deepened. Where was Malcolm-Jamal Warner, and why did so many powerful institutions seem invested in keeping that question unanswered? The turning point came when an anonymous whistleblower, identifying themselves only as Sable, contacted an investigative news collective based in Berlin. Through a series of encrypted messages, Sable claimed to possess additional FBI files including communication intercepts between federal agents and an unnamed private entity concerning subject MJ.W. The files allegedly contained transcripts of encrypted emails exchanged between government departments and a corporate security firm known for handling sensitive relocations. While the authenticity of these files could not be independently verified, the tone and formatting were strikingly similar to the original memo that had started the entire controversy. Sable's final message before going dark reads simply, "He's alive, but not free." The implications were staggering. If Malcolm-Jamal Warner had not died but instead been extracted, the question shifted from how to why. Several intelligence analysts who reviewed the available materials proposed that Warner might have become entangled in something far beyond the entertainment industry, something involving national security or private intelligence operations. One hypothesis suggested that the actor had obtained classified information through his aborted film project, which may have unintentionally exposed sensitive government programs. Another, more sinister theory proposed that Warner had been targeted not to be silenced, but to be hidden, placed in what insiders refer to as protective displacement, a covert relocation method for individuals deemed too valuable or too dangerous to remain public. An interview with a former intelligence contractor known only as Dale added fuel to this narrative. Speaking from an undisclosed location, Dale described operations where public deaths were staged to protect assets or defectors. "It's rare, but it happens," he admitted. "You erase someone from public life to save them from something bigger. It could be a threat, It could be leverage or it could be punishment. Once they're gone, the world moves on and so does the operation. When asked if he believed Malcolm-Jamal Warner could have been part of such an extraction, Dale paused for a long moment before saying, "If he's alive, he didn't run. He was moved." Meanwhile, scattered sightings began to surface across the Caribbean. A hotel clerk in the Bahamas described a man resembling Malcolm-Jamal Warner checking into a private villa under the name Michael Warren. A fisherman from the Dominican Republic claimed to have ferried a similar-looking man from a private dock to a small island owned by an offshore trust. Each story was unverified, yet all shared striking details. The man traveled with 2 guards, paid exclusively in cash, and avoided cameras at all costs. Within days of each claim reaching the media, witnesses either retracted their statements or stopped responding to reporters entirely. In one particularly disturbing case, a journalist investigating the sightings reported being followed and having her laptop stolen during a layover in Miami. The FBI, pressed repeatedly for comment, maintained a wall of silence. "We have no active investigation into Mr. Warner's death or any subsequent events," the Bureau's spokesperson reiterated. However, leaked correspondence between federal agencies suggested otherwise. A classified interdepartmental memo marked confidential, do not release, contained references to a Project Mirage, a term that would soon become central to online discussions. The memo, dated 3 days after Warner's supposed death, mentioned the containment of media narratives and the suppression of unauthorized leaks regarding high-visibility subjects. No direct reference to Warner was made, but the timing was too coincidental to ignore. At the same time, financial investigators noticed unusual activity connected to one of Warner's dormant production companies. Large wire transfers, totaling several $1 million, were traced from accounts in Switzerland, the Cayman Islands, and Singapore, all occurring within a 10-day window following his reported death. The recipient accounts were tied to entities with false addresses, and one of the shell companies listed a former intelligence consultant as a director. Someone went to great lengths to move money fast and quietly, financial analyst Olivia Kearns explained. "This isn't typical of estate handling. This is asset displacement, someone preparing for life under a new identity." In Hollywood, the narrative was shifting again. Colleagues who had previously mourned Malcolm-Jamal Warner's death began to express quiet doubts. A former co-star confided to an entertainment journalist that Warner had spoken in cryptic terms during their last conversation, saying, "If anything happens to me, don't believe it right away." Another associate recalled that Warner had recently canceled multiple appearances, citing security concerns. These accounts, once dismissed as paranoia, now seemed to form part of a larger, more disturbing puzzle. As the months passed, the digital trail began to fade. Links disappeared, accounts went dark, and the online investigators who had once driven the movement found themselves targeted by coordinated misinformation campaigns. Deepfake videos appeared, muddying the timeline even further. Some showed Warner alive and well, others depicted his supposed funeral. Disinformation became the perfect cover by flooding the public sphere with conflicting truths. The real one could vanish unnoticed. In the end, what remained was not a definitive answer, but a haunting question that refused to die. The world had watched a man's life end and then possibly continue in secret. The FBI's silence, the missing footage, the vanished witnesses, the shadowy money transfers, each thread pointed toward a reality carefully constructed to remain hidden. Perhaps Malcolm-Jamal Warner had discovered something he was never meant to see. Perhaps he had simply wanted to disappear. Or perhaps the truth was something far more unsettling. That the world had been shown a death it was meant to believe. Late one night, nearly 2 months after the story first broke, a journalist from Berlin received a final encrypted message from the account once used by Sable. It contained no documents, no files, only a single line of text: "He's safe, for now." The message was traced to an offshore relay and then vanished, leaving investigators with nothing but speculation and silence. Somewhere beyond the reach of cameras and headlines, Malcolm-Jamal Warner's name continued to echo in the gaps of an unfinished investigation, a story too dangerous to confirm, too strange to dismiss, and too incomplete to forget.